Unloved, unwanted, and forgotten. You know, I feel so strongly in my heart. So it was a crazy week this past week, and Anna and I were just out very late every single night, and I was really praying. I mean, I take these times seriously. I pray and I research and say, like, God, what do you want me to share on these Friday nights to the table? I'm humbled that I can stand up here and share these things. And so I was praying, and just nothing's coming to me. Nothing's coming to me. And I just am like, Lord. And so late last night, I stayed up all through the night. And I'm not saying this like pat myself on the back. I love staying up late, by the way. So night owls in the house. Yes! Woo, let's go. I would love to sleep until 12 every day, and I would be perfectly satisfied. And then go to bed at 2:30 a.m., perfectly satisfied. So last night, as I'm just praying and researching, I could not get these 3 words out of my head. And I really feel that the Lord tonight is addressing this in our hearts. Unloved, unwanted, forgotten. I really feel God wants to do some soul speaking tonight. He wants to speak to our hearts. Because really what I'm not talking about is saying, hey, let's speak about those who are unloved and unwanted and forgotten and go to them. That plays a part in it. But really, I feel that there's some of us here, if not all of us, who are walking through this or have walked through this. I mean, really. These 3 things, even the words when you see them up there, just don't feel right. And maybe you're in this season. Maybe you are legitimately in a season where you feel one of these 3. You're right here in the midst of that. But maybe not. Maybe God tonight has to uproot some deep hurts that you've covered up and planted. He needs to uproot those in order that he can do a deep, true, authentic healing inside of your heart. Things from the past. Things you've experienced, situations you've encountered. Unloved literally means not loved, not cared for. You might be at this place. Does anybody love me? I know this is like, oh, we're going to have... No. Saying, does anybody love me? Does anyone even care about me? Or maybe we're in that season of life. I mean, I'm married 4 years in July. And joy. Awesome. Crazy. But in the season of life where you're like, will anyone ever love me in this way, in a relationship? Boyfriend, girlfriend, marriage. Feeling that. The heaviness of that. Maybe it's things you've done. Maybe you said, you know what? I'm not worthy to be loved. You believe that lie. No, you truly believe it. You feel it. And actually your actions, the things you do, show that. No one can ever love me. I've made mistakes. Actually, no one should love me. Maybe you land in this other spot. You have done everything you can to show your love for someone. A mom, a dad, a brother, a sister, a friend. And they just do not return it. They don't love you. They don't even like you. It's not reciprocated. And you land right there. Unloved. And it's just so heavy on your heart and in your life. You might have even become callous. You might have even become confused. And that's where you're at. What about unwanted? Maybe you felt rejected, not accepted. Could be in a crowd of people and still feel alone, which is one of the scariest things, right? Feeling unwanted. Group of friends, family, wherever it is, but you just feel that so heavily every time you enter that situation, that place. Maybe you felt people regret you. I know this is heavy tonight, but you know what? I find in these moments, it's those very things that are piercing us directly in our heart because God has us on his heart. Even if you're sitting there and you're like, you know what, I don't even know if I'm into this whole God and Jesus thing. Well, guess what? He's so into you. He cares about you. He loves you. And tonight, he wants to speak to you. Let him speak to your heart. Maybe regret. You didn't become what they wanted you to become. That could be your parents, grandparents, friends, whatever it is. You didn't become what they wanted you to become. And because of that, now you feel unwanted. You're not the favorite. Regret. You feel like an outcast. Just feel like a total outcast. Maybe you just have low self-esteem. We're getting real tonight. We're getting vulnerable, but you just have low self-esteem. No self-worth. That could be because of anything. Maybe you were bullied. People made fun of you. Failure, rejection, a relationship you had, breakup, destroyed. A relationship you had, breakup, destroyed. And just your self-esteem has just gotten lower and lower and lower. How you view yourself, who you are. And you even look at that word unwanted and you see your face. Come on, one of the worst feelings is being unwanted. Think about elementary school, getting picked for teams. Do you know what I'm talking about? I was like very tiny. I haven't grown too much. Like I wish I could say that, and I'm like standing up here at 6'6", but I'm 5'6". So, but like lining up in 4th grade, picking teams for dodgeball, and they're, in my case, like, oh man, they're picking girls over me because they're taller. Their reach is longer. You know what I'm talking about. We've all been there. It's like, oh, line up. Are we going to do the number thing? 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. That's great. I really like that. But just that feeling, kind of like, and you're there, outcast. What about forgotten? You know, maybe this is one of the heaviest ones out of the 3 because of the fact of, at least if I'm unloved, my existence is still seen there in some sense. If I'm unwanted, they at least realize I'm there. But forgotten is almost like they don't even know I exist. They, the world around us, our friends, loved ones, or maybe you walked through something really difficult. Someone who meant a lot to you passed away or died, and you were surrounded by all those people, and they were loving you and taking care of you, and that first month, those first 2 months, 3 months, but it's a year later now, and you feel forgotten. Maybe you walked through that tragedy and that difficulty, and it felt like everyone was there with you in the midst of that, but now, slowly, the distance, time, situations, and you feel forgotten. Maybe you had a parent who you loved, and they walked away from you. They abandoned you. And they haven't looked back, and you feel forgotten. I'm getting real tonight because I know I wouldn't give you a sappy message and talk to like this just out of my own self. I know that this is on God's heart because he wants to speak to your soul, your heart, declare the truth of who he is, who he sees you to be. I want to read, though, because sometimes we read the Bible or we see it, all right, and we're like, old book, old people, wah, wah, boring, right? But the Bible is so relevant. People just like you and I walk through same things. Feelings, emotions, and situations just like we're talking about now. Thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago, they walked through the same things. And I want to tell you a story about a woman named Leah. Literally, her name, when you look it up and you kind of break it down with biblical meaning, means unloved and unwanted. Okay? So I'm going to jump through this story just a little bit, and so follow along with me. There's a man named Jacob. This is in the Old Testament, in the book of Genesis. Right, that's the really Old Testament. That's like the first book of the Bible, really old. There's a man named Jacob. His dad is Isaac. His grandpa is Abraham. You might have heard of that. Maybe that's a familiar name, Abraham. Yes, the Jewish people will consider Abraham their father, the father of their faith. All right? So you got Jacob. He's getting older. He's getting ready to be married. Right? I see him looking like Gaston. You know, all of you have a picture of how you think Jacob looks. None of us know how. But that's the picture, right? So take that out of your mind. Keep it. Do whatever you want to do. But he's getting ready to get married. And so at this time now, he's like, boom, I'm on the hunt for my wife. All right? So he heads out and he meets his uncle Laban, who has 2 daughters. Back then, they would marry their cousins. I don't recommend it now, okay? Don't do it. So don't say, yo, I'm on the hunt. Okay, good. If you want historical conversation about it, we can talk afterwards, and I can tell you why we see this in the Old Testament. Okay, good. So he meets Laban, that's his uncle, and he's got 2 daughters, Rachel and Leah, but Jacob is like, yo, Rachel. I like her. I like her a lot, okay? I'm going everywhere tonight. Caffeine and Skittles. Rachel Thomasini gave me Skittles like an hour ago, a huge bag. I was just eating them. So Jacob agrees to Laban. Laban says, yeah, you can marry my daughter Rachel. Work for me for 7 years. Most of you guys would be like, yeah. How many years for her, Leah? I'd work a lifetime for you, baby. Thank God it was just 8 months. So 7 years. 7 years, and I'll give you my daughter Rachel. So at the end of the 7 years, Jacob's like, awesome, wedding's approaching. It's about to happen and take place. And so on that wedding night, Laban deceives his soon-to-be son-in-law Jacob, swaps Rachel for Leah. There was no electricity back then, all this stuff. I don't know. You're young. I don't know how. So he doesn't know. But they consummate the marriage. Covenant's made. Wakes up in the morning. It's Leah. But he's married to her. So he's obviously ticked off. Goes to Laban. Dude, what are you doing? What in the world are you doing? Why is it Leah? I don't love her. I don't want her. I want Rachel. Laban, sorry, man. It's just our custom. In our family and stuff, the oldest daughter's got to get married off first. So listen, if you work another 7 years for me, you can marry Rachel. And he does it. He works 7 more years in order that he can be married, remain married to Rachel. In Genesis 29:30, it says that Jacob loved Rachel more than Leah. Then in the next verse, 31, when the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, he opened her womb. Leah winds up having many children. Rachel remains barren and later has some children. Joseph is one of them. But that verse stuck out to me. When the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, unwanted, he opened her womb. Here's the interesting thing. Out of someone who was unloved and unwanted, I mean, come on, let's be real here. Married for life that you always knew, you weren't even like the 3rd or 4th choice. Your dad had to trick someone in the middle of the night in order to get you married. What does that do for your self-esteem? I even think those terms, unloved and unwanted, they're not even good enough for how that would have felt, the weight of that. So constantly she's feeling this. But she has 2 sons. She has many sons, but 2 of the main ones, Judah and Levi. Here's what's awesome. Out of the lines of Judah and Levi comes the great king, King David. And guess who comes out of that line? Jesus. Jesus Christ. The greatest gift of love, Jesus Christ, came from the line of one who was unloved and unwanted. Man. See, when we look at the Bible and we see this grand narrative, this story, it's constantly God restoring and coming back for his children. But he's running after his love, us, to bring us back to him. Our God is so loving. But what about being forgotten? I couldn't shake the story of the 10 lepers. Leprosy is a very bad disease, and especially at the time of Jesus, when he was walking on this earth, there was a lot of people with leprosy in the ancient world. It was horrible. If you study it and see what happens, it's just grotesque and painful to think of what people had to walk through. But in Luke 17, it's in the New Testament, there's 10 lepers. They see Jesus along the border between Samaria and Galilee. They cry out to him, "Can you heal us? Master, have pity on us." Jesus says, "Go show yourselves to the priest, and you will be healed." They go, they're healed, and out of the 10, only one man comes back to say thank you. But let's pause here. See, if you had leprosy, you were not just on the outskirts of the village, of the city, you were actually out and removed from the community. Not on the outskirts, wandering around. You were out of the community. They had leprosy colonies there, okay? People who had leprosy would go and this is what they would tell a family. When you say goodbye to them as they go out of the community, forget them. It's as if they're dead. I mean, what's worse than that? Being alive, but knowing you're forgotten, as if you're dead. So they're out, and they're there, forgotten and alone. But Jesus comes through. Jesus engages those who were forgotten because they never left his mind. He reaches out his hand, his words, and they're healed. But here's something that's so ironic. Isn't it ironic how the forgotten so quickly forget what it feels like to be forgotten? 10 of them were healed. I mean, they just went from outcast, no, worse than that, dead men walking, to restored in a moment, in a journey back to the community. They forgot that quickly to even come back and say thank you. But one man, a Samaritan nevertheless, who was like enemies of the Jews, who Jesus was. Listen, Christ knows, and this is not a long message, and so I'm going to be closing this down in just a bit, but Jesus does not simply sympathize with us. Yes, he empathizes, but even deeper, he associates with us. That's what I mean. He associates with the unloved, the unwanted, and the forgotten. In Matthew 25, verse 34 through 40, I want to read this. This is Jesus speaking here. He's painting the picture of this is the end of the ages. You know, it's the end of the whole world, and now standing before him, all humanity, and he's separating. He uses the terminology the sheep and the goat. What he's saying is those who know him and those who do not. And listen to this. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father. Take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Then the righteous will answer him and say, "Lord, when did we see you hungry? Feed you? When were you thirsty, or did we give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in? Or needing clothes and clothed you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?" Listen, the king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." You did for me. He associates himself with the unloved, the unwanted, and the forgotten. The Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. The Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. Constantly when Jesus is walking this earth, he's spending time with the unloved and the unwanted, the forgotten of society, whether it's those who were sick with leprosy, tax collectors, prostitutes. He associated with them and sat with them. I'm going to invite the band. They can start heading back up here. And just stay with me, okay? I know it can get a little distracting because I'm so tall and Seth is so short. There's something more than this, though. See, when Jesus sits down, the unloved, and he sits down with the unwanted and the forgotten, things begin to change. No, things really begin to change. He's not just doing this for status updates, right? He wasn't just doing this for status updates. Yo, guys, Instagram this. Sitting with the unloved. So I don't want to see any like hashtags later on your Instagrams. Hashtag serving the unloved and the unwanted. Okay? He didn't do it for status updates. He didn't do it just to create this type of atmosphere and do this. No. He did it because he was wanting to reveal to them deep healing, deep change, deep transformation. Oh, see, when Jesus sits down with you, he calls out what's inside of you. He can do it without words. He reveals his love for you that's deeper than anything you can imagine because you did nothing to deserve it. 1 John 4:19 says this, we love because he first loved us. That's the right definition of love. It's not just mere acceptance. It's not just high fives and pats on the back. Go do whatever you want. I don't care. No. It's true love. Sacrificial love. It's what allows us to be a people who love. Because of what he did. 1 Peter 5:7 says, cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. That word care even meaning the intimacy of love. He wants that. That's why he sat with the sinners. He said, I didn't come to clean the clean. I came to find those who were dirty, those who were lost. Clean them, purify them, show them the way. That's our Jesus. He sits there to do something. Not just to pat you on the back as you're going through this and say, it is what it is. He transforms. He changes. Feel unwanted? Listen to this. John 17:24. Now you might say, come on, where's my practical 3 steps? You got me so depressed the first half of this, talking about unloved, unwanted, and forgotten. Now give me my 3 steps so I can be on my way. Come on, stop. Man, we want it our way. We want it quick. I tell you all the time, this is a journey. This is a pilgrimage. This is a step-by-step. It's a relationship. And here's the deal. I'm not here to give you the quick 3 steps of a motivational speaker. I'm here to point you and me to the feet of Jesus Christ. That's where transformation takes place. I could give you 3 or 4 steps and be a great motivational speaker, and you could walk away and plug these in for the rest of your life, but something internally is never going to change. Something's not going to transform. That deep place of hurt is never going to be able to be penetrated and healed. Because there's only one person who can do that. That's Jesus Christ. Ephesians 2:19 through 20. It's talking about forgotten, but I want to go into unwanted. Listen to this. This is Jesus talking in John 17. Father, I want those you have given me to be with me where I am. He's talking about us. And to see my glory, the glory you have given me, because you loved me before the creation of the world. I want them to be with me. We spoke about this last week. But hear it again for this place. He wants you. He desires to be with you. Not for anything you can give him, but because he loves you. Forgotten, Ephesians 2:19 through 20. Consequently, you are no longer foreigners, strangers, but fellow citizens with God's people and members of his household, built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, with Christ Jesus himself as the chief cornerstone. You're not a stranger. You're not an outcast. Jesus says, come to me if you're weary, you're tired, defeated. He hung out with the outcasts. He invited them in. Sit at my table, dine with me, break bread with me. That's the God we serve. He calls you a member of his household. You have a place. You have a place at his dinner table. You know how when, like, growing up, whether it was a grandma's house or your friend's house that you loved who had a big family but you were close to them, or it was your own family and there was dinner time, everyone kind of has like their spot, you know? It's like, oh no, that's Dad's spot. That's little Billy's spot. It's Big Johnny's spot. No, okay. So you had your spot. Did you ever go to a place out in a restaurant, you kind of don't know people too well and stuff, and it's like, we're dancing around the chairs like, are you going to sit here? Do I sit here? You know, it gets real awkward. And you're like, I'm going to go to the bathroom, come back, then there'll be... You're not an outcast. You're not an outcast. Oh man, he loves you. He desires you. He wants you. He's got a seat for you. Tonight is an embrace. And let's stand up together because we're going to have a chance to respond to this worship. But tonight is an embrace. That's what I want you to see. Christ wants you to know that you are loved, desired, and on his mind. That's what I felt. I felt that God just wants you to feel his arms embracing you, squeezing out the lies that you're not loved, squeezing out the lies that says you are so unwanted, that you're regretted, that your life is worthless, you're an outcast. He wants to embrace you tonight. See, because he associates with us, the unloved, the unwanted, the forgotten, guess what we're called to do when we've experienced his love, his purpose? We're called to associate with the least of these. Because we too were once hungry and someone fed us, thirsty and we received a drink, unwanted stranger but we were invited in, naked but we were given clothes, sick and someone took care of us, alone in a prison, someone visited us. So we can't stop here. That's my challenge for you. Let the Lord embrace you. You need it tonight. But if not also, and you feel, no, I've been healed here, well then look at your life and say, Lord, who am I embracing? Who am I inviting in? So maybe you're called to be his hands, his feet, to someone sitting right next to you tonight. So let's just respond in this time, just taking a moment to worship. If you say, I'm uncomfortable singing, it's kind of my first time, then sit there and hear the words that are being said, or quiet your heart and listen. He's here with us.